You are watching Breakfast Central on News Central. Let's start up with news in Algeria, North Africa, where the country voted on Saturday in a parliamentary election that was marked by low turnout amid boycott calls and a crackdown on dissent. Now, pro-government parties had urged Algerians to turn up in large numbers for the crucial vote, hoping to restore stability under 2 years of turmoil since longtime leader Abdelaziz Bouteflika was forced to resign.
Now, Saturday's vote followed a presidential election in 2019 and a referendum on an amended constitution last year. But many Algerians still think real power is wielded by the army and security forces.
All right, so there you have it. The latest in Algeria. We know that longtime leader Bouteflika left power 2 years ago in the country, and perhaps that's really given this bit of voter apathy with people not, especially young people.
Now, if you look at in addition to that, if you look at the election that happened on Saturday, I mean, there were over 13,000 candidates who came out to file for the seats that were about 407 in the parliament, and of which half of that list came out and said they were independent. I mean, it brings a lot of questions. The people are acting in terms of
because nobody wants to align with the normal, regular political
parties
systems in the country of Algeria. We have seen protests about 2 years ago in the country that led to the ouster of longtime leader Bouteflika, who also left due to health reasons. And you have people perhaps justifiably saying that perhaps their power still lies with some military systems in the country. So there you have it with the latest out there in Algeria. Right, so let's come home to Nigeria, West Africa. All right, so straight to Nigeria now, where some Nigerians took to the streets on the weekend on Saturday, 12th of June, to say democracy is under threat from rising insecurity and bad governance. Now, the Democracy Day demonstrations came as President Muhammadu Buhari has been struggling to control terrorism, criminal abductions, and separatist movements. Now, just 2 weeks ago, President Buhari suspended Twitter after he deleted a controversial tweet of his, and some Nigerians have described the act as a dictatorial punishment against free speech and expression.
Now, Saturday's protest started early across many Nigerian states, including Lagos, Oyo, Ondo, Port Harcourt, Ibadan, and the capital, which is Abuja, with protesters wielding placards and demanding an end to insecurity and what they called systemic oppression. Now, there were reports of some protesters being tear-gassed, and gunshots were fired in the air to disperse the protesters. Now, one may want to ask, when does peaceful protest become a criminal offense in the country?
Quite interesting questions. Now, we have correspondents who were monitoring the protests on Saturday at different centers, Bernard Akede and Mary Chinda. Well, good morning, Bernard. Good morning to you, Mary.
All right, well, we'll start with Mary Chinda this morning. All right, Mary Chinda, you were at different locations during the whole demonstration and the celebration that happened on June 12, which was on Saturday of 2020. Can you tell us what your observations were?
Well, it was far away from a celebration. This was not a celebration at all. It was a June 12th that was full of fear, apprehension, tension, shops locked, markets locked, people in their houses, unsure of what the day was going to be like. If you looked at the report that we filed in, you realize that there were very few people on the streets, on the very busy road of Allen in Ikeja. You'll find just a handful, just a handful of people. I was also at the Lekki axis, that's the Lekki toll gate area, where everybody thought that that was going to be a rally point for people to protest, just like it was in October of 2020 when we had the NSAS crisis. And there were no people there, only a heavy presence of security men. And the security men were even very hostile to people who were doing their early morning jogging. And the language was, look, we're here, there's nothing you can do, you better watch out, you better not come here, we don't want no protest that is reminiscent of the NSAS crisis, so you just better go away, So it was not a celebration at all. It was a democracy day that was full of fear and apprehension for Lagos residents.
All right, Mary Chinda, you clearly had different locations covered on that very Saturday. So, and you also spoke to some of the security agencies, if I'm not mistaken, the Civil Defense Commands. Now, what was their mood? What were they saying to journalists? Was the protest illegal, or was there a sense of, oh, you can protest, but do not damage property and do not get mixed up with hoodlums? What was their stance?
Well, it was a clear case of, we understand you've done this NSAS thing before. We understand you have a right to protest, but could you do it peacefully? Especially when I spoke with the Civil Defense Corps Commander in Lagos, who was actually saying to the protesters, you are young people, Nigeria is going to be fine, the government is listening to you, but can you just keep it peaceful? And now that was away from what had happened at Ojota, where clearly my colleague Bernard Akede caught people, got shots of people who were being protesters who were being apprehended by the Nigerian police, and they were being malhandled. And then you begin to wonder what kind of a democracy that we have, where people are not, where protesters are treated like common criminals on the streets.
All right, Mary Chinda, now looking at some of the video clips that we saw over the weekend, you gave reports as well as Ben Akede. We realized that some non-protesters were also arrested, and alongside with those who actually came out to protest. Can you give us a little update on that? Has anyone been released? Are they still in custody as we speak?
Yeah, you know, my colleague followed that report, and I was watching it and I was monitoring what was going on there. So just before he actually left the scene, the protesters who were apprehended were actually released, and that was because that in itself got not just the local Nigerian media and people talking, but international media also got a wind of what was going on. So protesters who were arrested were actually released, you know, before the end of the day. We also found out that at that same spot, the Nigerian celebrity, Mr. Macaroni, was also there, even though he was not manhandled, but he was also there to register his presence at the protest. So people who were actually picked up by the Nigerian police were discharged or were released, you know, before the end of the day. But if you also look at some of the interviews that I did with very passionate protesters, they were saying that away from people who have been apprehended at this protest, there are other people who were involved in the NSAS protest. There were other persons who were involved in various protests who are currently in police custody. And Nigerian youths were saying, release these people. Protesters are not criminals. They are only trying to say to government, you need to do this right. And what was the essence of the protest? They were protesting for adequate security, protesting for good governance, protesting to ensure that they have a Nigeria that works. And this is over 60 years after democracy.
Okay, we still have Bernard Akede with us right now. Bernard, good morning to you. You were clearly at the Ojota area where protesters were tear gassed, as we all saw, not just Nigeria, the Africa, the world. So tear gas, even you yourself perhaps got some bit in your eyes. So tell us the scenarios of what really happened on that day.
Thank you and good morning, guys. Well, like the pictures you can see on the screen, yes, protesters were tear gas. But I would like to correct an impression, first of all. Now, the young man you can see on the screen presently, that's Gbenga Komalafe, Comrade Gbenga Komalafe, calls himself, who's the co-coordinator of Coalition for Revolution. He did state clearly that the protesters got to a certain point and the police had asked the protesters to remain at that position because from there, the police will be able to protect them. So the police did say. But the protesters said they didn't feel comfortable there, which is why they continued to march on. Now, the police also did say that they had fears and they also got information that the people around, some of the, I don't like to use the word hoodlums, but that's the word they use, that the hoodlums around may take advantage of the protest and hijack it, just as it happened during the NSAS protest. And the police said if that happens, they may not be able to, they may not have the capacity to control what may go wrong at that particular point. So they tried to ward off the protesters. Now, I'm not justifying the use of bullets or the use of tear gas in dispersing the crowd, but I think there should be some kind of rearrangement when it comes to protesting, particularly in this part of the world. Certain protests should have some kind of organization and organized leadership such that the movement doesn't get hijacked. Sadly, I also think that the police should adjust their ways when it comes to dispersing the crowd and when it comes to handling protests. Clearly, it got out of hand. People were tear gassed, including myself. Shots were fired into the air. Nobody was shot, as far as I can tell. And those who were apprehended in my presence eventually were released before we left there. But ultimately, it was very, very dramatic. It was quite eventful. And I don't believe this is the way protests should be done anywhere in the world.
All right, thank you so much, Bernard. Let's now bring in Ikemesid Effiong. He is the head of research for SBM Intelligence, which provides analysis of the Nigerian social, political, and economic situation. Good morning, Effiong.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear.
All right, Effiong, let's go right into it. What do you make of the events that happened on Saturday, June 12 of 2021?
What we saw with the upswell of protests in certain locations, not just in Lagos, but in other pockets of the country, is that there remains a significant appetite for political engagement in Nigeria. I think when you situate the events of Saturday within the context of October 2020, as well as a much smaller protest efforts in January, right, of this year, it's clear that on a lot of the issues that are of importance to a wide basket of Nigerians, there appears to be little engagement on the side of government. There is the perception by lots of Nigerians that democracy isn't still working for them. They can't see it in their wallets. They can't feel it in household spending, right? And democracy clearly has some work to do in terms of showing up in an increase in the standard of living of Nigerians. And I think that continued disaffection and frustration with the performance of the Nigerian elites. You saw that on display right on June 12, despite repeated warnings by government, despite many calls by many sections of civil society as well as stakeholders, that Nigerians stay at home. We still found enough Nigerians who thought that the risks, right, of actually being on the streets was worth it, in light of the current political and economic situation in the country.
All right, Ikemesid Effiong, it's been 22 years since the return to democracy for Nigeria. Now, going by the recent events across the country, would you say, Nigeria is truly a democratic nation, and with this democratic exercise, how would you rate it based on, 22 years of observation of democracy practice since 1999?
Well, I would say it could be better. Nigeria is certainly not a perfect democracy. There are a number of institutions that rank Nigeria as a flawed democracy. We certainly do elections, but we haven't gotten the election practice right. An uncomfortably high number of Nigerians with their blood and with their lives, come election season. There's something to be said around how well elected representatives at the federal, state, and local level continue to engage with voters and with citizens in non-election years. A lot of the things that are supposed to be the priorities of any given civilian government, the provision of social services, infrastructure, as well as, undergoing, painful but necessary economic reforms to set Nigeria's economy on a path towards becoming a proper 21st century economy. Very little has been done in that light. So in terms of the broad contour lines of democratic practice, Nigeria has largely held up right over the last 2 decades and 2 decades and change. But in terms of to use a tired phrase in this part, in terms of seeing the dividends of democracy, in terms of democracy actually producing, a positive social good, right? Nigerian democracy, 22 years on, right, still has a very long way to go in terms of showing that it is capable of doing that. And I think, that's why you see a lot of calls, right, from stakeholders in disparate parts of this country, for some form of structural and systemic reforms. You've got some stakeholders on the fringes of Nigerian politics, who who have gone the entire 9 years and are calling for an actual breakup of the entire system. It's because of that democratic disaffection.
Okay, so Bernard Akede, we need to ask you this question. Do you share the same sentiments that Effiong has just given to us?
Well, yes, I actually do. Well, maybe not totally, but yes, I actually do. I also think that there needs to be a lot of sensitization on both sides, the side of the police, side of the government, and side of people when it comes to protesting and what exactly it is. But again, you should understand that there's so much distrust right now from the people to the government, such that regardless of what the government says, the people don't trust the government anymore. Sadly, I do remember again that Saturday there was one of the protesters, the leader of that particular march, was speaking to one of the police officers in charge, saying, "We did send a written document to the police commissioner in Lagos concerning this protest." And remember that in the papers and in the news, the police commissioner said he didn't receive any information concerning the protest. He wasn't aware of the protest. So there's been a lot of back and forth. I think there should be more information. There should be more awareness created. And the government needs to create more trust in the people when it comes to their rights and what they can do.
All right, quick one, Bernard, and to you, Effiong, before we let you gentlemen go. We just celebrated June 12th, but from the events of Saturday, it looks like it was nowhere near a celebration. From Lagos to Abuja, Port Harcourt, it was more like, protest and dissatisfaction. Would you say that's the case? Hello, Effiong.
As with many things, as with many things that have become, inherent in Nigerian democracy, I think that's the case. I think, despite the fact that, Saturday, June 12th on Saturday was less of, of a celebration and more of, yet another statement by, a plurality of the Nigerian electorate that they aren't satisfied with what's going on. I think, it's completely par for the course. Par for the course of democracies, right? In democracy, I think, as one observer described it, right, is a never-ending set of unaccomplished expectations, right? And I don't think that Nigeria is anywhere close, right, to the point where we can look at actual tangible benefits and go, oh yes, we can celebrate A, B, C, D, E. We're very far from that, right? And so I think moments in moments in Nigerian history like like June 12 serve as just another marker and just another reminder.
Thank you very much.
We've made
Thank you very much, Effiong. Thank you so much, Bernard. I suppose for you there was no celebration. You clearly had your eyes tear gas, so. Right, Bernard. All right. Well, we'll carry on nonetheless. Now, Bernard Akede himself, you just saw with us right here on News Central correspondent, was quite busy on Saturday covering the protest, and he found in this report.
What started out looking like a quiet day turned out to be a dramatic and eventful democracy day.
The police is beginning to shoot tear gas canisters. That's the third one going up. If you can hear me now, the police have just fired 3 canisters of tear gas.
The Gani Fawemi Park in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, was the scene for a planned protest scheduled for June 12, Nigeria's new Democracy Day. The day commemorates the annulment of the election won by MKO Abiola in 1993, an election that many have tagged the freest and fairest election held in Nigeria, and some Nigerian youths decided to air their grievances at what they called bad governance. The park was peaceful and quiet initially, but later a crowd of protesters soon approached, chanting songs of solidarity. The police soon swung into action, shooting canisters of tear gas and shooting bullets into the air to disperse the crowd. Some protesters were apprehended but were later released.
Police wanted to confine us to that space, which we felt was not too safe for us because, it's middle of nowhere. But they said there are hoodlums there. But we believe all Nigerians are partakers in the sufferings of the land right now. As far as we are concerned, the hoodlums are products. They were made hoodlums. by this system. So we don't recognize hoodlums, but we always insist that our protest must be peaceful. Our statement must be made very strongly, but in a very peaceful manner, because when you allow it to degenerate, it distracts attention from what we're actually saying. My appeal is no longer to the deaf and dumb politicians. My appeal is to Nigerian people to come out, to begin to say in their millions. And that's what we did in June 12th. That was how we forced out the military. Exactly. It is time we come out again to say enough is enough.
The crowd of protesters later left the area as more police personnel arrived and took charge. Other parts of the state remained peaceful and calm as most Lagosians spent the rest of the day indoors. Bernard Akede, News Central.
All right, so there you have the report from Bernard Akede, who we just spoke to right here on Breakfast Central. I would like to say thank you to, Effiong, for joining us on the program this morning. Thank you very much, Effiong.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Right, still more on Breakfast Central. We're going straight to Zambia, where President Edgar Lungu, yesterday, he collapsed in the capital, Lusaka, during the National Defense Day event. Now, in a statement issued to reporters, Secretary to the Cabinet, Dr. Simon Miti, said the president is well and has continued to discharge his duties. He said that the president experienced what he termed sudden dizziness, but recovered immediately.
Now, the Zambian leader who ascended to power in a by-election necessitated by Michael Satta's death in 2014 had a similar experience in 2015, and it was caused by what the presidency called an esophagus condition. Now, meanwhile, Zambia is preparing for a general election set for August 12th in 2021, I beg your pardon, as we speak.
Well, our correspondent from the country, Zambia, Lydia Makina, sends us this report.
Hello, good morning. Hope you guys are doing fine. All right, good to see you. You look nice, by the way. Right, so a lot has been happening with the head of state. The state recently, the Legal Resources Foundation had challenged His Excellency Dr. Edgar Changwa that is not eligible to stand as a president for the forthcoming general election, which is in August. So the researchers from the University of Zambia and Dr. Sisho had also filed in a petition that His Excellency Dr. Edgar Changwa is not eligible to stand as a president, which there was silence among the Patriotic Front supporters, and there was no much of campaign. But on Friday, there was good news that he is eligible to stand as the president for the forthcoming general election. So we say that PF supporters celebrated over the good news, which that their presidential candidate is eligible to stand as the president at the first term, which they had found in that the first term he took over from His Excellency, the late President Dr. Michael Chilufya Sata. So the first term is not counted because he took over from the late president. So it's counted from the second term, and this is the third term, which we call it a third term, but according to the law, it's now the second term to him. That so he's eligible to stand as a president. So that wow, that was good news, and supporters from the Patriotic Front celebrated over this, that are now campaigning freely, a door-to-door campaign, and His Excellency Dr. Edgar Changwa had the good news while he was on his 4-day working in Eastern Province, where the news found him. So you see that he's also at peace, knowing that is actually eligible to stand as the president for the forthcoming general election. Well, yesterday again, he was officiating the 45th Defense Day in Lusaka, where he felt dizzy and he collapsed. He was later rushed to the military hospital and discharged within a short period of time. He was discharged. So according to the head of state, so we see that they have assured us to say that His Excellency Dr. Edgar Changwa is now doing fine, and he has recovered and he is doing fine. So he collapsed during the commemoration of the Defense Day, the 45th Defense Day yesterday in Lusaka. Well, that's it from my side. It's back to studio.
Thank you very much, Lida Makina, our correspondent from Zambia. So Edgar Lungu, the president, is doing fine. Well, still Breakfast Central on News Central is a Monday, but coming up next on the program. In the world of sports, Novak Djokovic wins yet another French Open. We'll tell you how.
And in the world of entertainment, Wizkid releases docuseries. More to come.
Plus, programs to watch later today on News Central. Kind of program.
Kuna kallon News Central TV.
And you're still watching Breakfast Central on News Central. Now let's bring you a review of the day's papers today, Monday, June 14th, 2021. And we're starting with Tanzania as the citizen in East Africa. So let's go to that newspaper this morning. And it talks about what debt servicing will cost the EAC states. That's the East African Congress of States. Says the three biggest economies with the Eastern African community plan to set aside the equivalent of a staggering 47 trillion shillings to service their respective national debts in the 2021-2022 financial year. So there you have it in terms of the figures: 23.4 trillion, 13 trillion and 10.7 trillion. Also on the front page, suspect narrates to police how he killed family. Find out more on page 3. And government vows to tackle sunflower problems. All of that on the front page. And the president is also there talking about Samia Hassan opens new gold refinery in Mwanza in Tanzania.
All right, from Tanzania, we move to Uganda, looking at the Daily Monitor this morning. The very big story we have here, it talks about COVID. It says police arrest 10 over COVID vaccines theft. You have that also in the Daily Monitor this morning. You will also see the picture of people walking. It talks about the travel ban. It says hundreds trek as inter-district transport bans bikes. It says that here in the paper also. Looking at page 6, it talks about Netanyahu, and this is what it says. Netanyahu out as new Israeli government approved. You have more details of this and all of that on the Daily Monitor for you to read.
Let's go to Nigeria with the Punch in West Africa. So they see what they have for us this morning. So it says Buhari's cow roots gazette doesn't exist. Grazing ban stays, says states. And talks about showing us grazing routes in Ondo if it exists. That's according to the governor. Kerodulu aides tell the federal government. Also on the front page, that big story from last night in the Knesset in Israel. Islamist joins Israeli government as Prime Minister Netanyahu loses vote opposition, which means Israel will have a new prime minister for the first time in 12 years. Also on the front page of the Punch this morning, it talks about the FRSC blames wrongful overtaking as 8 killed in Bauchi Osun crashes. And hoodlums return to Lagos Ibadan Long Bridge. Residents raise the alarm. All that and more on the front page of the Punch in Nigeria.
All right, looking at the very last paper we have for you, we are going to the Daily News, and that's from Zimbabwe. Well, what we have in the Daily News, we just have a major story now. Government pushes back on reforms appeal, describes opposition demands as mere politicking. That's what it says in the paper. Talking about health, it says heed new COVID-19 measures. This is what the experts are coming out to say from the Daily News this morning in Zimbabwe. All right, that's it for the newspaper review we have for you this morning. We are moving straight to COVID-19 reports. See, I can't. Right. Now, as the African continent still battles to contain the spread of COVID-19 pandemic, there seems to be a decline in the number of cases recorded in South Africa. But for Ethiopia, the reverse is the case. Ben Akede is here to give us the latest on COVID-19 update. And I think we have Israel Ifiribo this morning. Good morning, Israel.
Good morning, Oluchi. Good to be here. Yes, indeed, you got it quite right there. Some of the cases in some parts of the continent are gradually dropping, but indeed in some other areas there's a sharp increase. But let's just kick off with a story here. So South Africa's Northern Cape province yesterday recorded a considerable decrease in COVID-19 infections in schools for the past week after dozens of schools were closed from early this month. A total of 103 new positive cases were recorded in schools over the week, but much lower compared to the previous weeks. The Provincial Education Department in a statement stressed the importance of parent support in learning at home as school teaching continues to be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now recall that on May 30th, the Provincial Education Department said it recorded 264 positive cases at schools during the previous week. In Rwanda, the Minister of Health, Daniel Njamije, has affirmed the Central African nation's capacity to prevent a third wave of COVID-19 despite a rise in infections in the past 2 weeks. There are currently 17 to about 20 people testing positive per 100,000 tests in the country. And the country said it will gradually expand rapid testing services in specific areas such as big hotels, and any event taking place in public places must not exceed 30% of the venue's capacity. Now, the country is expected to secure 4.5 million more vaccine doses in the coming months, including 1 million Johnson & Johnson vaccines. Rwanda launched the first phase of COVID-19 vaccination campaign nationwide on the 5th of March and plans to vaccinate 30% of its population by the end of this year and at least 60% of its population. In Ethiopia, the country registered 159 new COVID-19 cases in the past 24 hours, taking the nationwide tally to over 274,000 as of yesterday. The health ministry said 5 new deaths and about 575 more recoveries were reported, bringing the national death toll to about 4,242 and the total recoveries to over 250,000. Ethiopia is Africa's second most populous nation. It has so far reported the largest number of COVID-19 cases in the East African region. But that's it at this point in time. Remember, the virus is still out there. African countries are battling to nip it in the bud, as indeed we're advising everyone out there to stay safe, use your face mask, and indeed ensure you practice physical distancing. That is one way by which you can help to tame the virus.
All right, thank you very much, Israel Ifiribo, for the latest in COVID-19 for South Africa to Rwanda and indeed Ethiopia. Well, still Breakfast Central, still to come on the program. That man there, Novak Djokovic, 19-time Grand Slams. We'll tell you how we did it against that man there, Stefanos Tsitsipas. What an epic find.
News Central TV.
thank you very much for still sticking with us right here on Breakfast Central on News Central. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms. We are at News Central TV on Instagram, Facebook, and watch us live on YouTube.
All right, it is a public holiday right here in Nigeria. We're still celebrating June 12, which fell on a Saturday. So federal government made Monday today a public holiday. So in this part of the world, people at home chilling. Now, Nigerian music sensation, that's Wizkid, he has done it again. And this time around, it's on a larger scale. Our very own Sam Dandy has more on that. Good morning, Sam.
Hi, Olisa.
Morning, Sam. What has Wizkid done again as
All right,
Starboy?
let me give you the gist, right? So on Saturday, Wizkid dropped a documentary series on his YouTube channel, right? It's titled Starboy Made in Lagos. Now, the series was created to celebrate his 10th anniversary of his debut album, Superstar, which was released on the same day in 2011. Now, of course, that album was big, okay? We had songs like Pakurumo, Holla at Your Boy, Love My Baby, of course, and it was a 17-track album which featured people like Banky W and Wande Cole. Now, fast forward today, Wizkid, 30-year-old Wizkid, is the most decorated Nigerian artist. First, he has the highest headies. Now, he's also the most decorated African artist internationally with over 20 international awards. You know, he also has a Grammy, people. Now, in this just released documentary, he spoke about everything from family to religion. And of course, you know, we had some clips from some of his closest peers and mentors. Let's watch this.
Wizkid, Star Kid, Starboy. I actually featured Wiz on a song, and yes, like about 7-8 years ago.
Literally genius level melody creation, you know, at the spur of a moment.
I see some people commenting on Twitter, they don't know Wizkid, but the Wizkid I know is very humble.
He was a studio rat, but he would just go to any studio where they would let him hang out.
But obviously he knows his struggle, but it was like they found a diamond.
Concerning celebration as well, I mean, he supports celebration with his heart.
And I think that that's what he does, and that's why the name Wiz, and obviously the kid, you know, because he was small in stature but big in heart.
Of course, we just gotta love Wizkid, right? It's our Starboy. And I think the part of his part of the interview, you should check it out, that got me the most is when he was talking about, you know, religion and how he said that the best or the biggest religion to him is love. Of course, he was talking about, you know, his mom and his father from two different religions. But anyway, enough of the Wizkid talk. Let's go to Ghana, where over the weekend, right, Ghana was lit because the Vodafone Ghana Music Awards Experience concert happened. So ahead of the actual award ceremony, right, there was a selected list of performances from some of the nominees from this year's VGMAs. Now, the likes of Kelvin Boy, you know, he rocked the stage, you know, giving us Afrobeat vibe. I saw Kwesi also, you know, he's kind of like a new school rap guy. There was also Celestine, you know, she gave us such a nice vibe. Kwame Eugene also performed, and that was a show-stopping performance, I can't even lie. Adina, who happens to be the first female to get 11 nominations, she performed her single Killing Me Softly. But there was also Episode, you know, who gave the crowd, you know, a reggae vibe. I just think Ghana is doing good for their music, you know. Enough bands around the, you know, Shatawale and all of that, but I mean, their music is doing great. Their music is absolutely great. So it was good for Ghana over the weekend. Then finally, let's move to Kenya. And now what is great is, a lot of people might not see it as an achievement, but Kenyan comedian Timothy Kimani, who people know as Ungush, right? He's probably the happiest man in Kenya right now because his social media, his YouTube to be precise, just hit over 500,000 subscribers. Now, of course, he joined the platform about 4 years ago, right? And he's had tremendous growth in the industry. He started as an actor. And, you know, he's ventured out into creating his own production company based off on YouTube called Ungush Creatives. Now, just last month, the comedian had announced his plans to retire, you know, at the age of 40. But now he's just 30 and he's had so much achievements already. Now, I think what blows my mind most about his family is his son, Tuji, who happens to be 3 years old, already earned a prestigious YouTube Creator Award, popularly known as the Silver Plaque, when you have over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So I'm saying the father is celebrating 500,000, the son, who is just 3, celebrating over 100,000 subscribers. And I mean, these things, that's not like YouTube is monetized, so they're making money. And I think they're just super funny, right? And anyone in Kenya knows them. They have a lot of views on social media. So congrats to the family.
All right, Sam, thank you very much for the latest in the world of entertainment. You're always bringing it to us, Sam.
I got you.
All right, time now for some sports. No time to waste. The big news out there, in the world of tennis at least, the world number one ranked seed from Serbia, Novak, no joke, Djokovic. Well, he had no problems. Yeah, he had a bit of problems, you have to say. He struggled. He lost his first 2 sets, but recovered to then win 7-6, 2-6, 6-3, 6-2, 6-4. He clearly suffered on that court, but he still won it against Stefanos Tsitsipas of Greece, which means he now has 19 Grand Slams, 2 shy of the record equal of 20 with the likes of Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. So a big one for Roger Federer, for Novak Djokovic, which means he's now won both Grand Slams in the year 2021. He's saying he's aiming for a Golden Slam. He's won the Australian Open, he's won the French Open, which means he's targeting Wimbledon at the end of this month and also the US Open. Can he? Will he? We'll just have to find out for Novak Djokovic. Also, updates on the health and status of the man from Denmark, Christian Eriksen. It's been confirmed he suffered a cardiac arrest in that match against Finland on Saturday, but he's been stabilized and doing fine. He's awake and conscious, and there have been criticism from the coach saying they were left with no choice than to play, and playing that game continuously, and which they lost 1-0, was a bad idea. But he's okay, Christian Eriksen. Let's hope for speedy recovery. Also, from an African perspective, Israel Adesanya does it again. Had no problems beating his opponent when it comes to UFC 265. This man is clearly a wonder kid in terms of his fighting style, and he's done Africa proud again by winning. Quickly, and talk about Euro 2020, some updates for you in terms of the results. We saw matches. England had a 1-0 victory over their opponents yesterday. Raheem Sterling scored the goal for them, not bad. The likes of the Netherlands also had a 3-2 victory over Ukraine, and Austria 3-1 over Macedonia. There'll be more matches today, but the sports team will tell you all about that much later.
All right, before we go, here are some of the programs we expect on News Central TV today.
Below the Skyline at 5 p.m. Find out what's below.
And at 7 p.m. West African time, we have Village Square, Africa.
And at 9 p.m. West African time, NC Continental Prime. You don't want to miss it.
Right here on News Central TV. Today is the 14th day of June 2021. It is a public holiday in Africa, in West Africa, I beg your pardon, Nigeria to be precise. But we'll be here again tomorrow. On behalf of Oluchi and Lisa and the production crew, we'll say to have a lovely day. Adios.
Bye-bye.